concrete walls. There's a place for us where we could go, where we could be alone. Between city lights, we don't have to hide. I wanna go, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in our secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? I can't understand why we can't hold hands, but they don't know what we have is real love. Aren't you sick and tired of having to hide? I know a place, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in our secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow?
What's up, you guys? Welcome to the live stream. It's time. It's time for our very first news stream, and I am super psyched to be here, and I am super psyched to have you here. ItsBlunty.
How's it going? Let's get some news going.
It's going good, man, and I'm super psyched to have everybody here in the chat as well. This is sometimes reported to be people's favorite part of my live streams. So let's just make it its own thing, huh? People in the chat are very glad to see you, Blunty.
I'm glad to see everyone in the chat too. Thank you so much for being here on a day like today.
A day like today, whatever. No, we're not talking about that.
No, that's why this,
we're talking about FPV news and only FPV news. So what news are we going to talk about today? We actually have show notes. We have a plan. This is like, I feel like real professionals. So let's tell them what we're going to be talking about today, Blunty.
So we're going to talk about Tracer. I think everybody wants to hear about some Tracer today.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Ghost's response to Tracer, because Ghost definitely made an update. We're going to talk about
Immersion RC, not one to let TBS do anything without like saying something in response.
We're going to talk about Shark Byte. We're going to give some news about Shark Byte, talk about your video, and talk about some different things about that.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about BL-Heli-32, variable PWM frequency. I tested that out today.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about the Caddx Vista drought. I think you have some thoughts about the Caddx Vista drought.
I do. Caddx Vista has been out of stock. Well, the big news is that Caddx Vista is back in stock, but I have a conspiracy theory about why it was out of stock for so long. So,
And last but not least, we're going to talk about maybe some new rumors about DJI FPV V2. I don't know.
DJI, yeah, there have been rumors and questions about DJI and when the V2 goggle is coming for a long time, but someone may have said something concrete. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's what we're going to talk about. And if you guys have ideas for the show, obviously tonight's content is locked in, but tonight, if you have ideas for the show, email news@fpvknowitall.com with things that when you see something, you're like, oh, that's interesting. You need to talk about that. Email news@fpvknowitall.com and we will talk about it. We're going to be streaming Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. That's now for the next little while. So let's start with TBS Tracer, one of the biggest news items of the week. What is Tracer? Hang on one second. I'm streaming.
I know.
What's up?
Need more time.
I don't interrupt my stream for that. Talk to Issa. Are you kidding me?
Oh, I tried calling her. Nothing happened.
Take care of it. Why do you think the door is closed? Jesus Christ. Okay.
So let's talk about Tracer.
Oh, yeah.
So TBS released Tracer, 2.4 gigahertz, high performance control link, quote unquote. It's not LoRa.
It's not LoRa. What is LoRa anyway?
What is LoRa anyway? I think that's a solid
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, so
LoRa-
LoRa is... Hang on, my kid is out of time. He needs to... I just realized my wife is out of the house. That's why he can't get her to extend his time. That's why he had to interrupt my live stream. Jesus Christ. Go without TV for a minute. So LoRa, long range. It's the chip. It's the technology used by Crossfire in 50 hertz mode and by Ghost to get such incredible range. So when Tracer was announced, I think most people thought, oh, it's just going to be a 2.4 gig LoRa Ghost response, and then they were like, no, it's not. It's not LoRa.
Yeah, it's not LoRa. But I think when we look at what it actually is, it likely is the same chip that you would use for LoRa. So
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day,
Semtech?
the Semtech SX1280. And word is that it's using the FLRC technology instead of LoRa, but on the same chip, because that chip has 3 modems on it.
Right.
And it's using the FLRC modem to get the 250 hertz mode in Tracer. So it is not LoRa, but it is the chip that also does LoRa.
Yeah, and the interesting thing to me about that is like TBS argues that FLR. When I first heard it was not LoRa. LoRa is like this magic thing that makes you have incredible range, incredible sensitivity. And when they said it's not LoRa, I was like, well, that's like saying, this isn't steak, it's bologna. I'm like, why would you advertise that? But there are some advantages to the FLRC. You can get like higher frequencies with telemetry, for example. So they claim 250 hertz with telemetry, which Ghost doesn't do.
Yep. I definitely think that Tracer is a great option. I mean, if you look at the Tracer releasing, like with the things that it released with, we got a nano and a micro module together with a starter set. We had receivers ready out the gate, to sell to people. So I definitely think that it's a solid release, that's for sure. And it's interesting that their whole thing was kind of, hey, we're not LoRa,
Yeah. I mean, the thing about Crossfire is that it's such an established and mature technology that there's a big incentive to go with it. And the thing with Ghost is that it's so new that they're like, the Ghost just had a bug and they fixed it. They fixed it instantly. But Ghost just had a bug where if you fail safe for more than like a quarter second or something, then it won't pick up the link again. So people would do GPS rescue and the quad would come back and it would fly home. And 20 seconds later it was home, and then you wouldn't get your link back and you had no way to land the quad. Well, they fixed it. But that's the kind of thing that is been taken care of in Crossfire for a long time.
Right, and Tracer uses the Crossfire base. So all the Crossfire shot, all the Crossfire firmware, everything should work with Tracer the same way.
Yeah, yeah. The interesting thing to me about this is that if Tracer is better, if we and we don't know this because TBS is not giving up any details because that's how they are. But if Tracer is using the same Semtech chip as Ghost, which is a fair guess, then whatever Tracer does, let's say this new FLRC modulation, oh, it's better. Well, then Ghost can just use it too because I think they're using the same chip, and it'll just be a competition of what?
Of, I guess, programming, right? Because I would assume it's not automatic. I assume you have to do some work there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're using the modem for the connection, but I assuming you're doing work to the packets. You're deciding how to handle them and that sort of thing. I'm not familiar enough with it, but I would assume there is some basis there for difference. And like you said, I think the other thing is like, Crossfire is Crossfire shot, and they're working with different communication with the radio. So Ghost also has to do that in parity, and they are. So I think that's where we'll also see the separation is like support on the other side.
Yeah, for sure. It would be a mistake to say just because they're using the same chip that we should expect the same performance from them. That's absolutely not true. And in fact, like not TBS, Tony Cake from Immersion RC has been promoting the sensitivity numbers, and those sensitivity numbers for Ghost are pulled from the data sheet for the chip that they use. And I will never talk bad about somebody actually giving hard numbers. Those sensitivity numbers are meaningful. But at the same time, if two different engineers design a circuit board around the same chip, they're not necessarily going to have the same performance. They're going to have different RF design, different analog design, different firmware decisions. And so the real thing at the end of the day, and this is actually TBS's argument for not releasing those numbers, is how far does it go?
Yeah, what's the real world? Like, what's happening?
Yeah.
I would also say that's part of the problem with TBS's announcement, though, because I think, Trappy said 25 milliwatts at 25 kilometers, and so if we're talking about real world, I think like maybe they did get that in a real world, but I imagine it was out in nowhere with no RF floor, with a wing, that's a mile up in the air, so that's a best case scenario.
Yeah. I actually am going to be going to Atlanta this weekend. There's a fly day in Atlanta related to the Flow State documentary. And Stingy's going to be there. And he actually, on my last live stream yesterday, said, "You want to do a range test? Ghost versus Tracer?" I'm like, yes. So
nice.
We'll see how that plays out. But we're actually going to try to do like an actual range test. There was a question. Why is everyone, Macon da Bacon wants to know, why is everyone saying that to stick with Crossfire for mountain surfing? Well, the bottom line is that 900 megahertz at 2 watts or 1 watt will go further than 2.4 gigahertz at 100 milliwatts. Even with LoRa, it just can't make up the raw difference in frequency and power. Lower frequencies go further and more power goes further. But the takeaway there for me is, as long as the control link outruns the video, I don't care. And for most people, it's going to do that. So, let's see. So, Immersion RC didn't take this line down, though, did they? Did they, Blunty?
Not at all. We got a notice basically right away from Immersion RC as soon as we found out about Tracer that they're going to release a 500 hertz update mode, and they're releasing a true diversity receiver. So we should mention that the diversity on the Tracer is antenna diversity, not true diversity. Right. Whereas Ghost is releasing a true diversity receiver. So I think they're really trying to come out punching. As soon as TBS made the announcement, they're here to fight them. So I think that I think it's interesting. Tony Cake commented that they're going to use FLRC for Ghost to get 500 hertz, which is the same technology presumably that they're using to get Tracer to 250 hertz. So I mean, right. The question is, and I think the question for everybody is, can you feel the difference? Is 500 hertz something special versus 250 hertz?
Because when we went from like S-Bus, FreeSky S-Bus, depending on there's various conditions, but FreeSky S-Bus, the way many people were using it, had somewhere in the mid-20s, maybe a little more latency. And when you go from that down to like 16 milliseconds, I think is Crossfire 50 hertz latency. When you go from like 25 milliseconds to 16 milliseconds, it's not subtle. You can feel it. I feel like you can. And then you go from 16 millisecond-ish down to Crossfire shot, which gets it even lower. Or maybe you go to 160 hertz Crossfire, and now you're down in the 4 or maybe 5 millisecond range. And you can feel it. But you go from Crossfire 160 hertz, which is 4-ish milliseconds, to Crossfire 250 hertz or Tracer 250 hertz. And now it's what, 3 milliseconds? And Ghost is 500 hertz, and it's like 2 milliseconds. And I wonder, are we really at the point of diminishing returns?
Yep. I think we definitely will need to see testing, but I think this is like the DJI argument. You know, any minor latency that's there, 99.9% of pilots are not going to know the difference. They're not going to be able to tell. They wouldn't tell in a back-to-back. It's not going to make them any better of a pilot. You know, I think it's, you know, maybe we could see some testing that shows something different, but I can't imagine that most people are going to see the difference. You know, I can just say personally that, you know, if I switch from a DJI analog to a real analog and I get the extra 10 to 15 milliseconds of latency, I can feel it. But in 4 packs, I'm flying the same way.
Totally agree.
And it's because you can tell the gap. You know the turn. You learn it. You have muscle memory. And so I think that maybe 500 hertz isn't that important, but we'll find out and see what the adoption is and see how important it is to other people.
It feels like that had as much to do with marketing as it does performance, because Tracer was released, and they in their marketing materials they said the fastest RC control link in the world, and and Tony Cape was just like, can we get a 500 hertz control link? Yeah, we can do that. Okay, you know, something like that. It will be interesting though. At the end of the day, I feel like those marketing numbers are that, and that if they're all down in the 4 or 5 milliseconds or less latency, I don't really care. I care about range, and I care about support and the maturity of the firmware. You know, Crossfire
is it going to fail safe? Does it come back? What does it feel like when it starts to fail safe? Do I have room? Like all those kind of things. I think, how accurate is the LQ? Are super important.
Yeah. So Tracer and Ghost. We'll just have to see. Tracer's new. One of the questions that came up in the chat was, if somebody has Crossfire, what's the motivation to switch to Tracer? What do you think about that?
I think there's very little motivation for most people to switch to Tracer. I think a new pilot maybe consider either one, but I think for Crossfire, most pilots are not going to tell. You know, you lock 150 hertz on Crossfire, and that's plenty of latency for most people. So I think that if you can fly that, I think most people should be able to fly that the same way. And to me, the gain from moving to an entire new system, changing all your receivers and things, just doesn't really make sense right now. If we see some massive change or some new technology or something that's like magical, maybe it's time to change. But unless you really need that latency, or unless you're like running out of room at races, I think it's probably okay to stay on Crossfire.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I have probably 20 Crossfire receivers about various quads. I'm not going to be swapping them all for Tracer. I will say, if you're in Europe, that 868 megahertz band is so small that you can't get very many pilots in the air at the same time, and those guys might feel more motivation to switch to 2.4 and get away from that. But other than that, I don't think there's a big motivation to switch. If you're starting out, you might want to start with it. So,
yeah, if you're starting out, it seems like you're going to get a faster link at about the same range as your video is going to go anyway. So there's no real difference for most pilots, and you might as well go Tracer or Ghost.
Yeah, the smaller antenna for whoops in the Discord, they're talking about Archimedes. If you have tiny whoops and toothpicks, the smaller antenna makes a big difference in Ghost.
Very true. But also you get the half, the Mini Mortal T on Crossfire.
Yeah, but the range on that is so bad. My tiny trainer had a Mini Mortal T on it, and it was locked at 160 hertz, and I could not fly to the end of the race course in clear air without fail-safing. Now, I know they're not all like that, but I don't like the Mini Mortal. So, next topic, shark bite. Ooh-ha-ha. Okay, sorry, I couldn't resist. Shark bite. My shark bite review came out. I've heard a lot of discussion about it. What is there to say about shark bite? Big disappointment, or not bad, or wow? I don't know.
So maybe one thing most people are going to want to know is going to impact you in such a way as you're going to use it.
Go ahead.
You know what I mean? Like, I just mean, like, is this something where you see, like, when this does an official release, hey, I'm going to fly some quads with this, and this is a good fit for me, and, that sort of thing? Or is this something where you're going to say, this is something cool, but I have DJI, this is something cool, but I have analog?
I just don't see a motivation for anybody who has DJI to switch to SharkBite.
Right.
I just don't see it. The image quality is not there. I mean, it's better than analog. I know there were people in the comments who were saying that's not better than analog. I think it's better than analog.
It's definitely better than analog. I don't think that shouldn't be a question for most people. I think if you look at the footage, especially if you're confused by the YouTube stuff, if you download some of the footage people have, you have a download link, and so does Mark Cuccio. I think if you look at those, you can really see it. I mean, it looks really good, but the question is, like, price versus what you have. If you've already got a premium goggle like an H202, you've got an HDMI import, I think it makes a lot of sense to have a, right now, you're saying that we got a $210 RX module, I believe is the price, and a $90.
I think they said, yeah, so it was $250 in the bundle, in the starter bundle, but the price they said they were shooting for, they thought was around $210 for the receiver.
Yeah, $210 for the receiver and $90 for the VTX. That's without a camera, I believe. Mm-hmm. And so, I think at that price point, that's still cheap enough where, it's less than the hop to DJI. So then you've got to look at resale on H202s and that sort of thing. And
it
I
is
think
if you've got the goggles.
Yes, that's what I mean.
If you've got the goggles.
Yes, if you have the goggles and you have an investment, I think you're looking at this as like, I can get a more premium experience. I can still get no latency issues. I don't have to deal with that whole problem. I don't have to support DJI because some people don't like to do that.
That's a big one. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that'll be a big sticking point for SharkBite.
I feel like it's definitely a step up from analog, but if you assume that you have a set of goggles and you want to keep them, okay, you're saving yourself maybe $500 by not. So let's say you've got a set of HDO2s and a rapid fire. I would guess that you could sell that for $400 today.
Yeah,
maybe
$450.
Maybe $450 if you found the right person. So let's say you're thinking about going DJI, and a DJI goggles and 2 air units are going to cost you $800. So you're looking at $350, $400 to get into DJI. You're looking at $250 to get into SharkBite. So it only costs you maybe $200-ish more. I'm not doing the math right now, but depending on your situation, it isn't actually that much cheaper to go with SharkBite.
Yeah, no, that's really true. Yeah, I mean, I guess unless latency is your big thing, but even then, I'll say today I flew some DJI and I had it on high quality mode and I could totally tell, but I flipped back to low latency and it felt great, like it always does.
I fly low latency all the time.
Yeah, and I don't really think latency is the big problem that everybody says it is on DJI. I think it was early. It's not really now. And so, like, I don't know. It's hard because if you haven't flown DJI to know that the latency is too bad for you to fly it, I think you're making a judgment call based on bad information. I think most pilots could fly DJI and would not know the difference and would be super happy with the video and would be like, oh my gosh, look at all these things that I can see. Yeah. It's just really hard. I agree with you. When you do the price breakdown, it's really hard to recommend SharkBite in the market that we're in. If there's so let's think about, what about a cheaper HDMI goggle? What's a HDMI goggle that could,
I mean, I think the Sky Zones all have HDMI in, and you can get like a Sky O2C for I think $300 is about the cheapest you're going to get a goggle worth having with HDMI input.
So we got 3 plus 210 is still $510, and the DJI goggles are $520. So
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. It's not really.
And then
much.
if you look at the module, like an air unit is 180, a Vista is 160, and a Nebula is 130. That's from memory, but that's what I remember. A $90 SharkBite 500 milliwatt VTX plus a camera, which is, no one knows the exact price of the cameras, but guess maybe $50. They're right in the same range.
Right.
And that, I think, is going to be the kicker. I hoped that SharkBite would come out and it could compete on HDMI output, latency, compatibility with existing goggles, and price. And you take price out of that, and I think that it becomes a lot less attractive.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
So, well, we'll have to see. We'll have to see what they
Yeah,
come up with.
for
It's
sure.
it's nice that they're out there.
We
It's
sh-
nice that they're doing it.
we should mention one thing you could probably get on SharkBite, not available yet, but there's a video out of the 200 milliwatt VTX option.
Yeah.
That's about 10 or 11 grams. So that's not something you can currently do with DJI. That's not possible.
Yep.
So 10 or 11 grams is still pretty heavy for a whoop, but you're getting in toothpick world where like a TP3, I'm sure with that VTX would be killer.
Yeah.
And so I think that, that's definitely somewhere, especially if you can get a 25 to 100 milliwatt VTX that's much smaller. I think they're
Yep.
really going to nail a huge portion of a market that DJI isn't going to hit yet.
Yeah,
I would love to see that happen.
That's tough though, because how many people are going to fly? Most people fly whoops. They fly 3-inch micros. They fly 5-inch. There are people out there who are like exclusively micros, but if the only thing SharkBite is bringing to the table is, oh, we've got this 10-gram video transmitter that's really good for small quads, you're not going to lock yourself into that. If it's not also maybe if that's like the number one thing you fly.
Yeah, it's tough if you're racing, like whoop racing. I think it's definitely a consideration. Somebody asked, Kieran Moore asked in the chat, is that 10 or 11 grams with the camera? That is with the camera.
Yeah.
That's why it's so appealing, I think.
Yeah. Sub 250 gram could come into play. Hero Psycho
Yeah,
points out.
Yeah, I definitely think if they can nail these low weight VTX options that are killer with no latency, I think there is a section of the market. I mean, I will consider picking up if I can put it on a Whoop and DJI is nowhere to be seen on a Whoop, I will definitely consider purchasing it.
The HDMI output was really great. I mean, it's one of those moments where you're like, oh yeah, that's how that should work. Just boop, plug in.
One of the other things I would say is that, like, one of the big things you hear from new pilots is that they want to be able to fly around their house with something that looks really good. Mm-hmm. And right now, DJI's options for that is decasing a Vista and still being too heavy. And I think if you think about the fact that, like, oh, I can buy SharkBite and buy this little VTX and fly around my house all day with no issues, and I can fly like a racer because I can build like the same weight as a racer. I think that starts to become much more appealing. There's a lot of give that you have to have. I'm still flying a lot of analog because I have to have it because I have small stuff. So
yeah,
it would be nice to fly all digital. That's a wonderful world.
Well, I feel like the statement that Fat Shark has finally given us something better than analog is really significant. Yeah. Because until SharkBite was better than analog, there was no reason to switch. The fact that it was digital, well, who cares? But now that it's definitely better than analog, at least in my opinion, they have room to grow into their user base and their customers. And they are out there. The majority of comments on the video were negative, I will say. But there were maybe 15, 20% of comments were like, oh my God, this is great. Finally, it's exactly what I wanted. So yeah, for those people, it's good. All right. Let's see here. Next on the news, BL 32 variable PWM frequency. Now I put this in the middle of the show because I wanted to start strong, and we're going to finish strong. This is a topic that I'm going to guess that most people are not like, oh yes, I'm excited about that. But I think this is a really exciting topic. Variable PWM frequency. I've heard some people say that it's one of the reasons that KISS ESCs fly so good. And the takeaway is that you get smoother motors with a higher PWM frequency, but you get less torque down low. So what BL 32 has given us now, or it's not out yet, but it's coming, it's in beta, and you've tested it, is the ability to have low PWM frequency at low throttle, and then sort of scale it up so you have high PWM frequency at high throttle, so you get the best of both worlds. And you've flown it. So
yeah,
how is it?
Yeah, right now you have to flash a hex in BL 32 Suite with the newest version. But otherwise, it's just a slider. You get a PWM low and a PWM high. I set to 24 and 48. And it is linear across the throttle. I felt like it was great. Low throttle response was good. I was able to turn thrust linear off, which I normally run on 48 kilohertz. Mm-hmm. And I felt like it was good. I still want to do more testing for battery life and like what that kind of looks like. But as far as like low throttle work, and I did some TikToking around like goalposts and stuff, and it all felt really good. I didn't feel any issues with throttle response at all. So I definitely
That's
think
good.
they're moving in a good direction. Any extra features like that where we can start to optimize that curve, I see in the future like almost PIDs for PWMs or something, like I imagine we're going to be seeing a world where we can tune that PWM frequency at each part of the throttle where exactly where we want it to get the right torque out of the bottom end. And like you said, I think that's what KISS is doing. A lot of people have said, how can KISS run 128 kilohertz? Because that would be super low torque and you couldn't do anything. But likely it scales. And if it does scale, then that would make a lot more sense. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. I had never thought of that. KISS does use 128K PWM, and if that's true, then they would not have any torque down low. So there must be more to the story, and maybe the variable PWM frequency is the more to the story, which is, I mean, I guess when I was thinking about this, I was like, KISS fans are going to be really annoyed because like Beal Helly does it, and now it's suddenly a big deal. KISS is, and part of the problem I have is that KISS is so secretive that people are like, KISS Fly is amazing. It's so good. And I'm like, oh, cool, but why? I want to know. I want to see under the engine. And if you sort of weld the hood down so I can't look inside, I don't care how good it flies. I'm like just inherently, I lose interest. So but credit where credit's due, I suppose. So... let's see. Oh, I shouldn't do that. I'm covering up your face. Getting my windows straightened out for this new live stream. So Beal Helly 32, there will be a new version of that coming with variable PWM frequency, and I'm excited to see that. Stability at low throttle, smoothness at high throttle. What more could you want? Well, whatever they invent next. Caddx Vista. Caddx Vistas have been out of stock forever. They are back in stock. First of all, if you have been holding out for Caddx Vistas, check out your local store. I just ordered some from Pyrodrone. Get FPV. I went to Get FPV first because Get FPV, I have affiliates with them, and so I always try to shop there first. Or Race Day Quad's the same, whichever one has the thing in stock. And they didn't have it. It was back ordered. And so I just went looking around and I got to Pyrodrone, and Pyro said, pre-order will ship November 1st. I was like, okay. Well, apparently everybody got their stuff November 1st, but Pyro was smart enough to say it's coming, so they got my order. So sorry, Get FPV. But there was a drought for a long time, and I have a theory about why the drought was. Why do you think there was a drought? Do you have a theory?
I don't really have a theory. I think that, we're going to talk about something in the next part that I think might be a reason that we could think.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's not my theory. So my theory, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm ready to hear it.
Okay, here's my theory. That was a rhetorical question. I just was like, I was setting up here's my theory. Caddx makes the Vista and Caddx makes the Nebula Nano. They released the Nebula Nano and everybody went, this looks like crap. Then they released V2 of the Nano and everybody went, it looks less like crap. It still kind of looks like crap. And I was just laying in bed, falling asleep, and I was like, oh my God, I got it. Caddx just stopped because they use the same video transmitter. It's just a different camera. Yeah. So Caddx just stopped making the Vista because people are saying, oh, I can't get the Vista. I guess I'll buy a Nano. And manufacturers of these 4-inch long-range quads, like the iFlight Chimera, people are buying the iFlight Chimera and they're like, I bought it and it didn't come with the Vista. It came with the Nebula. I'm not making a literal accusation, but what if Caddx just like stopped making the Vista to force people to buy their backstock of Nebulas, which nobody wanted?
That is one way to clear out all the old Nanos. That's for sure. That is definitely one way.
Sorry, guys, we haven't got any. Because somebody said, oh, I heard they had a chipset shortage. And I'm like, well, they're still selling Nebulas.
Right.
And it's the same chipset.
So the other way to look at it is they ran out of everything, but nobody wanted the Nebula. So all that was left was Nebula.
Look at you being the voice of reason. You're right. My conspiracy theory is more interesting to me, but you're right. And it could just be that was the last thing left. It's true. Anyway, Vistas are back in stock, and that's a good thing.
That they are.
Vista or Air unit? Where are you at?
Vista all day long, every day. Screaming from the rooftops, Vista.
Yep.
It's lighter, it's better, Also,
Yeah.
the SD card slow error is terrible right now. So even if you want to use the air unit, it's not really usable for what it's supposed to be,
Yeah.
unless you want to run 1.04. So
Yeah.
I think you
And
kind of
people
got to
say
go.
there's heat buildup issues, and I mean, if you turn it on and just let it sit, it will overheat. But as long as you don't just let it sit for 5 minutes, it's fine. I run mine at
It's
1200,
fine.
1000 milliwatts.
Yeah, the legal
I run them
limit,
at max power, no
of
issues.
course.
They will burn. They will freaking burn you if you let
Yeah,
it sit. They
100%.
will literally burn you. Sorry, I'm talking over you. I'm not used to having a co-host. Before we get to the last topic of the stream, and by the way, this is not going to be a 2-hour stream. The news stream is a short and sweet. Looks like we're coming in at around 40 minutes. Who knows? Before we do that, I do have some super chats I'm going to get out of the way. Thanks to Duck My Squee for $5 New Zealand dollars. It's total marketing. Oh, this goes back to the beginning of the stream. Oops, my bad. It's total marketing, the whole refresh rate thing. The X-Lite only does 260 hertz, so there's no motivation to go faster on the RC Link. Yeah, A Day at the Range, thanks for $3. And Carlos Botros, thanks for $5. Beta FPV X-Night 360 versus Stan FPV Cinebird XL. That's not on the show notes, but I will weigh in. Paul Nurkala has a review of the Beta FPV X-Night 360 that basically confirms my first impression of it. My first impression of it was, what's going on with this? This kind of looks kind of janky. And Paul Nurkala actually got one and reviewed it and basically confirmed my decision. Just get the Stan FPV Cinebird. It's amazing.
In my experience, if there's a choice between Beta FPV and a company that's worked on something, it's probably the company that's worked on something that you want to purchase. I love Beta FPV for what they do, but if you can buy from Stan FPV, who developed and figured it out, I think that's the guy to buy it from.
I agree. Beta makes some good products. They do, but that one feels really rushed.
Yep.
Okay, last topic. The big question that everybody wants to know is, should I buy DJI goggles today, or should I wait because they're going to release a new goggle soon? And I've been saying approximately, if you look at the Mavics and stuff, approximately 18 months it seems to be their development cycle, which would put the next DJI sometime in like February or March. But Christmas is coming, Black Friday's coming, so people are wondering. And I saw this. Hang on, I'm going to need to put this on the stream. Hold on, my screens are messed up. Left monitor. Somebody posted this to RC groups. Now, this guy is Multi-Rotor Drones, who is, I guess it's a shop. He's a dealer. And he or she, I don't know if this is a male, but they say an upgrade of the DJI FPV goggles is coming in the next weeks. DJI stopped selling V1 to distributors. Interesting. That's all we've got.
We have that, and also independent reports. I will say that I've heard in other places, rumors and scuttlebutt. About a V2. And I think, normally there's a rumor, normally there's some V2 rumors going around just in general. I mean, I've heard them every month I think since DJI's been out. But I would say there's definitely been an uptick in the last couple weeks
of the rumors.
Different sources. Yeah, of the rumors from different sources. So I feel like either everybody's got the same bad source, or there's going to be a V2 coming out fairly soon. Who knows what the time frame is? Who knows how much backstock of goggles they have? Who knows when the sales are going to be? Those sorts of things are definitely not something we can answer.
Yeah.
But I would say in my gut, I do feel like there's a V2 coming.
There's another post, and I don't have this prepared to put it on the stream. This was a Facebook post from a guy named Cohen Vrientz. He says, I got info today that DJI FPV is sold out permanently. Hope this is not final. In other words, he's saying that it's been discontinued. And then a guy named Chris House said, DJI might release their own FPV drone and force users to buy their hardware. They might as well abandon the goggles. Wrong. No, that's the wrong one. Then Cohen Vrientz says, it's strange. Normally, I have 3 DJI dealers where I order. They all have the DJI FPV in stock. Now they are all sold out, and one said it was permanently discontinued. Probably a new model coming. So that's there's always questions and rumors, but that is the first time someone who actually seems to have evidence has
The
said
ability
anything.
to order. If that's the case, though, we're going to start seeing this come out quite a bit. Because if these retailers all can't order, I assume that's going to start to leak.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and I mean, it feels like if this is the wrong time to pay full price for a set of DJI goggles based on that rumor, especially with Black Friday coming in just a few weeks.
Yeah, I think regardless if there's a V2 coming or not, I think we should be waiting for Black Friday if you're going to look at buying them. I mean, it's just a few weeks. Everybody wants the new thing right now, but if you wait, I think it'll be worth your while. There's a good chance those things are going to go on sale. It's been a while. Father's Day, I think, was our last sale, so I would expect to see one.
Yeah, why Father's Day? I don't know, it doesn't make any sense. But yeah, don't buy electronics in November. There's a good chance there'll be a sale anyway. So that's exciting. And then of course the speculation. What is your if DJI V2 is coming, what would be your number one feature that you would like to see added or changed?
Personally, I think they should tune analog without a receiver. I think
analog.
I think they already have 5.8 gigahertz antennas on that thing. How hard could it be to throw something in there to get quadversity or whatever with the 4 antennas that they have and make that happen? And that's just, I think most people want HDMI out, but for me, that's not a big draw. I would expect to see a V2 with HDMI out, though. I can't imagine that we would continue to do this without HDMI out, though. We still haven't seen a dongle or some other option for the V1, so it's kind of hard to say.
We know the dongle exists. That's a fact. When I asked the DJI engineers, I was in a meeting with them, and they said, what kind of features would you like to see? And I said HDMI out, and I said, surely you guys can just unlock that in firmware, right? And they said no. They said the goggle doesn't have an HDMI bridge, which I guess is a chip that converts the information from whatever it is into HDMI. So they said you cannot. And the way that it works with the dongle is it just outputs some kind of encoded video stream over USB, and then the dongle box turns it into HDMI.
Yeah, from my understanding with the smart controller, it's a network connection. So it's like makes a USB network connection, and then that sends the video over the network. Yeah.
So HDMI out would be a big one. Would really help with racing. Would really help with live streaming. It would make everybody who paid $700 for a smart controller feel like a chump.
That's also true. Though that is a great device for for certain situations, I think. However, it's $700. So
yeah, it's a great device for certain situations, no doubt. But why would no one wants to pay $700 for a screen?
Yes.
It's just because you're a streamer and you think it's worth it. A Day at the Range says that's probably why they gave me 10 sets of goggles. They paid him off to not release his SD. That's the other thing. A Day at the Range claims, and I believe him, that he made a hacked firmware and hacked hardware that gave HDMI output from the DJI goggles. And then DJI came along and paid him not to release, basically bought it off of him so they could bury it. And he says they also gave him a bunch of goggles. Now he says 10 goggles. OLED screens. I would love DJI. Please, can I have OLED screens?
Yes. Also, that would be amazing.
$200 more for a set of OLED screens. I won't. By which I mean you'll give me them to review. He did not release how much he got paid, Blind FPV. So we're going to keep doing the news, and eventually, as time goes on, maybe we'll finally be able to say. But for now, that is it. That's all the news this week. Nothing else happened in all of FPV.
Not a
that's
thing.
Newsworthy. And if you guys see anything that you think we should talk about, email news@fpvknowitall.com. We will be back to next week at 6 p.m. When there will not be, a giant nationwide thing demanding everyone's attention. How did we do on this one? How are our analytics? Let me look. How many. We got 740 viewers. That's pretty freaking good.
Yeah, that sounds
pretty freaking good. Can we get Blunty? Sam Zobi, thank you for a $5 super chat. Can we get Blunty to do the weather in a bikini next time? I feel like that would be a very hairy experience.
Yeah, I 100%. Also think there's some kind of terms of service situation going on there.
Alrighty, guys. Thank you guys for coming out. we're going to call it, and we will see you next week.
Thanks,
Blunty?
guys. Take it easy.
All right, that's it.